My name is Anna, and I'm 35 years old. At an age people say is halfway through life's journey, I had nearly everything a woman could wish for. A husband, Mark, whom I loved with all my heart, a beautiful brownstone in the heart of bustling New York City, and a marriage that all my friends looked upon with admiration. In our 10 years together, Mark had always been a model husband, gentle, attentive, and caring. He wasn't a man of flashy words, but his actions always made me feel cherished. He remembered our anniversaries, my favorite dishes, and was always the one to comfort me when work left me exhausted. I truly believed this marriage was my peaceful harbor, an unbreachable fortress that no storm could ever topple. Our home wasn't enormous, but it was the fruit of years of our shared hard work and savings. Every corner, every piece of decor, was chosen and arranged by my own hands. I loved the feeling of coming home after a stressful day, cooking a warm meal, and watching a favorite movie with my husband. Life flowed on peacefully, like a calm river without a single ripple. I imagined that simple happiness would last forever, until the day I personally welcomed a wolf in sheep's clothing into my own home. It all started 3 months ago, during a family reunion at my husband's childhood home in upstate New York. That was the first time I met Jenna. She was a distant cousin of Mark's, a family connection so remote that even he had to explain it to me for a while before I understood. Jenna was thin and pale, her eyes always downcast, looking utterly pitiful. Mark's mother explained to me that Jenna's family was very poor, her parents were often sick, and she had dropped out of community college to find work in the city. With no success. Hearing the concern in my mother-in-law's voice and seeing Jenna's timid demeanor, my compassion swelled. I thought about my own comfortable life. Helping a struggling relative felt like the right thing to do. Besides, my job had been incredibly demanding lately, and having some help around the house would be a relief. That evening, I suggested to Mark, what if we let Jenna come live with us? Our house is big enough. One more person won't be a problem. She can help with the housework, and we can pay her a salary. It would give her a job and a safe place to live, instead of her struggling out there alone. Mark was watching TV. He turned to me, a little surprised, but then nodded. It's up to you, honey. If you think it's a good idea, go for it. She's family, after all. We should help if we can. Seeing that he didn't object, I happily made the decision. I told my mother-in-law my plan, and she was overjoyed, squeezing my hand and thanking me profusely. I even generously offered a salary that, even to me, seemed excessively high for a live-in housekeeper, $2,500 a month. My thinking was simple. With a decent income, she could send money back to her parents and make their lives easier. My kindness at that moment was pure, untainted, like someone standing at the peak of happiness, wanting to share a little warmth with those less fortunate. I had no idea that kindness misplaced is a form of cruelty, not only to others but to oneself. The day Jenna arrived at our home with a single, battered suitcase, she kept her head bowed, whispering, "Hi, thank you for having me." I took her bag, smiled warmly, and showed her to the guest room I had prepared. I even took her shopping for new clothes, telling her to treat our home as her own and not to be shy. In the beginning, Jenna was diligent and respectful. The house was always spotless, meals ready on time. She was quiet, always working silently, and would avert her gaze whenever she saw Mark and me. The more I saw her, the more I pitied her, and the more certain I was of my decision. I was proud of my own generosity, proud of the perfect life I had built. I didn't realize that behind that pitiful, innocent facade was a pair of eyes that were always watching, calculating, and hiding a venomous envy I could never have imagined. Life with Jenna seemed easier. I had more time for myself, no longer rushing home from work to start chores. Mark also seemed pleased. He sometimes commented on how much he liked Jenna's cooking. Everything seemed to be going exactly as I had hoped, a perfect arrangement for a happy, peaceful family. I was so immersed in that perfect illusion that I didn't notice the first cracks beginning to appear, small fissures, but enough to signal an impending earthquake. It happened one weekend evening. I came home late from work to find Jenna busy in the kitchen. I went to put my purse away, intending to help her, when I heard a sharp crash, followed by a soft cry from Jenna. I rushed into the kitchen, The scene before me was the shattered remains of a designer ceramic bowl I loved, scattered across the tile floor. Jenna was standing there, clutching one hand with the other, blood starting to seep through her fingers. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I gasped, my heart sinking for both the bowl and for her. The cut didn't look deep, just a small slice on her index finger, but the blood was alarming. I'm so sorry, Anna." It slipped. Jenna whimpered, her face pale with fear and guilt. I sighed, trying to stay calm. "It's all right. Don't worry. It's just a bowl. Let me see your hand." I was about to lead her to the sink to wash the cut when Mark burst in from the living room. He practically flew into the kitchen, his face a mask of extreme tension. His eyes weren't on me, nor on the broken pottery, but locked on Jenna's bleeding hand. "Jenna, are you hurt?" His voice was filled with a level of concern that I found excessive. He brushed my hand aside, grabbing hers and inspecting the tiny wound as if it were a life-threatening injury. I was taken aback by my husband's reaction, but I quickly dismissed my discomfort, thinking he was just being overly worried about his cousin. "It's just a small cut, Mark. I was about to clean it and put a bandage on it," I explained. But Mark seemed not to hear me. He spun around, his eyes blazing with accusation, his voice becoming unreasonably harsh. "What were you doing, Anna? Why did you leave her alone in the kitchen to let this happen? You know she's not used to this kind of work." I was speechless. Every word he said was like a bucket of ice water thrown in my face. Why was he blaming me? Jenna was the housekeeper. Working in the kitchen was her job. I had just walked in the door from a 10-hour workday. How could I have been supervising her? And the broken bowl, the cut, it was clearly a small accident. Why was he acting like I had committed a terrible crime? "What are you talking about?" She accidentally dropped a bowl. "It's not like I did anything." I tried to defend myself, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Don't make excuses," Mark snapped, then turned back to Jenna. His tone immediately softened, becoming gentle and full of pity. "Don't cry. It's okay. I'm here. Let's get you to an urgent care clinic, just to be safe. We don't want it getting infected." At this point, I couldn't ignore the strangeness of it all. A cut smaller than a fingernail, one that just needed to be washed and bandaged, and my husband was insisting on a hospital visit. His concern for Jenna went far beyond that of a cousin. It felt like the concern of a man for his woman. "It's just a tiny cut. Does she really need to go to a clinic?" I asked, trying to find some logic in his actions. Mark shot me a look as sharp as a knife. "What do you know? What if a piece of ceramic is stuck in there? Can you take responsibility for that?" Without another glance at me, he gently guided Jenna, who was now sobbing and leaning against his shoulder, toward the front door. "Come on, I'll take you. Don't worry, I'll handle everything." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the cold kitchen with the shattered pieces of my favorite bowl and the shattered pieces of trust that were beginning to crack in my heart. I stood there, staring at the small pool of blood on the floor, then at the door they had just left through. A sickening feeling of suspicion, for the first time, crept into my mind, cold, clear, and terrifying. After Mark and Jenna left, the house fell into an eerie silence. It was so thick and heavy I felt like I was suffocating. The ticking of the wall clock became painfully loud, each tick marking a beat of my chaotic thoughts. I remained motionless in the kitchen, staring at the floor. The shards of the bowl glittered under the light, like fragments of the marriage I had so carefully built. Jenna's blood had begun to dry, turning a dark, ugly brown. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe Mark was just overreacting. He was always an emotional person. Maybe he really did see Jenna as a little sister. I tried to find rationalizations for his behavior, to cling to the faith that was on the verge of collapsing. I told myself not to be paranoid, not to destroy our peace over a single moment of irrationality. With that resolve, I grabbed a broom and dustpan and began to clean up the mess. I carefully swept up every last sliver of ceramic. After cleaning the kitchen, I decided to tidy up Jenna's room. She had been living here for months, but her belongings were still sparse. I thought I'd organize her closet and maybe buy her some new hangers. Her room was at the end of the hall, small but with a nice window overlooking the backyard garden. As I opened the door, a cloying, cheap perfume scent hit me. I disliked it. It was too strong and artificial. Her room was simple: a bed, a particle board wardrobe, and a small desk. I opened the wardrobe, planning to fold the clothes she'd left tossed on her bed. Most were items I had bought for her, but mixed in were a few skin-tight, very short dresses I had never seen her wear. After organizing the clothes, I pulled open the small drawer in the wardrobe to see if it needed tidying. Inside were just a few cheap lipsticks and a compact, but as my fingers probed the back corner, they brushed against something soft and square, wrapped in foil. Curiosity piqued. I picked it up. My heart stopped for a beat when I realized what it was: a single, individually wrapped condom. My whole body went rigid. Why was this in Jenna's drawer? As far as I knew, she didn't have a boyfriend. She spent all her time at home and rarely went out alone. So who was this for? A horrifying thought flashed in my mind, but I instantly suppressed it. No, it can't be. Maybe she was just curious. Maybe a friend left it here. I concocted 1,000 excuses to soothe myself, but a dark cloud of dread was settling over me. I placed the condom back where I found it and closed the drawer, trying to breathe evenly. I left her room, my steps heavy. I went to our master bedroom, my mind a blank. I needed a distraction. I decided to gather the dirty laundry. I picked up Mark's jacket, which he had tossed on a chair. It was the one he had just worn to take Jenna to the clinic. Out of habit, I checked the pockets before putting it in the hamper. The outer pockets were empty, but when I slipped my hand into the inner breast pocket, a sickeningly familiar feeling met my fingertips. I slowly pulled my hand out. Resting in my palm was an object identical to the one I had just found in Jenna's room: a single, foil-wrapped condom, and the detail that made my world stop turning was the brand name on the wrapper. It was exactly, precisely, the same as the one in Jenna's drawer. Thump. The jacket slipped from my hands and landed softly on the floor, but in my ears, it sounded like a thunderclap. Everything around me started to spin. 2 pieces of evidence, 2 different locations, 1 identical brand, all notions of coincidence evaporated. The veil of denial I had desperately tried to maintain was ripped away without mercy. The truth was laid bare before me naked, disgusting, and excruciatingly painful. My husband, the man I loved and trusted with all my heart, and the cousin I had taken in and cared for, they had betrayed me. They had been carrying on a sordid affair right under my nose, in my own home. I collapsed onto the floor next to Mark's jacket. The 2 condoms, one from her room, one from his pocket, felt like 2 venomous snakes coiling around my mind, injecting the poison of a brutal reality. I couldn't even cry. My tears had run dry, leaving only a hollow, bone-chilling emptiness. My entire world, the rose-colored reality I had painted for myself over the past 10 years, shattered in a single evening. I started connecting the dots, replaying every small detail I had previously overlooked. The times Mark came home late, claiming a surprise client dinner, smelling of a strange perfume that wasn't mine. The hushed, whispered phone calls he always took on the balcony. The increasingly frequent business trips on weekends, from which he always returned distant and exhausted. The subtle, loaded glances I had caught between him and Jenna. The fleeting touches that I had dismissed as accidental. And his behavior tonight, the over-the-top concern, the baseless anger directed at me. All of it, all the disparate pieces now snapped together to form a single, hideous portrait of an affair. When did it start? A month ago? 3 months ago? The day I brought her into our home? The more I thought, the more disgusted I felt. Disgusted with the man I had shared my life with, the man I had dedicated my youth to loving. Disgusted with the cousin I had treated like a sister, giving her a home and a life. They had turned my sanctuary, the home I had built, into the stage for their deceitful play. They ate the food I cooked, slept in the rooms I furnished, and then stabbed me in the back with the sharpest of knives. The overwhelming pain slowly gave way to a different emotion: rage. A cold, simmering rage burning in my chest. Why did I deserve this? What had I done wrong? I had given my all to this family, sacrificed for this marriage. I had treated everyone with kindness, And this was my reward? Blatant, shameless betrayal. No, I will not collapse. I would not give those two adulterers the satisfaction of gloating over my pain. If they wanted to act in a play, then I would be the audience, and I would also be the one to write the final act. I stood up, my legs steadier now. I picked up Mark's jacket and folded it neatly, as if nothing had happened. I went back to Jenna's room and placed her condom back in its exact spot. I had to be calm. Acting rashly now would be suicide. They thought I was still the pitiful, clueless wife. Fine. I would continue to play that part. I would let them sink deeper into the very trap they had set. I returned to the living room, sat on the sofa, and turned on the TV. Some cheesy romance movie was playing, but I couldn't focus. A plan was beginning to form in my mind. I would not file for divorce immediately. If I did that now, I would lose everything. This house was in both our names, but I had put down the majority of the money from my inheritance and personal savings. Mark's business had been failing for years. He was a CEO in name only. His actual income was negligible. I would not let him walk away with half of my assets to build a new life with his mistress. I needed proof, incontrovertible proof of their relationship. What I had now was circumstantial. I needed something more. Something that would leave them with no defense in court, in front of our families, our friends. I would expose their true faces. I would make them pay for what they had done to me. The sound of the key in the lock rattled. Mark and Jenna were back. I took a deep, steadying breath and forced a strained smile onto my face. I had to act. I had to play the part of the naive, forgiving wife to perfection. My own play was just beginning. When Mark and Jenna returned, I was still on the sofa, my eyes fixed on the television as if engrossed in the movie. I heard their footsteps, one heavy, one light, as they entered the living room. Mark walked in first, his face still sullen. Jenna followed, her hand now neatly bandaged, hiding behind him like a frightened bird seeking shelter, her red-rimmed eyes occasionally darting in my direction. How did it go? Is she okay? I turned and asked, my voice a perfect imitation of concern, betraying none of my true feelings. Mark glanced at me and answered curtly, "She's not going to die, if that's what you're worried about." I offered a weak smile. "Don't say that. She's your cousin, and she's living in our house." "Of course I'm worried." Jenna finally spoke, her voice thick with fake remorse. "I'm so sorry, Anna. It's my fault for being so clumsy. I've caused you both so much trouble." "It's okay, Jenna. As long as you're not seriously hurt, that's all that matters." "Go get some rest," I said, my tone as gentle as ever. Mark helped Jenna to her room. The way he supported her elbow, the way he leaned down to whisper something in her ear, none of it escaped my notice. But I pretended not to see. I quietly went to the kitchen, poured a glass of orange juice, and brought it to her door. "Drink this. It will help you feel better. Don't worry about dinner tonight. I'll order takeout." Jenna looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of surprise and suspicion. She probably couldn't believe I could be so calm and kind after being publicly berated by my husband. Mark, standing beside her, also gave me a quizzical look. I just smiled a smile that sickened me to my core and walked away. Let them think I'm a fool. The more they underestimate me, the less guarded they will be. That night, I told Mark I was tired and went to sleep in the home office. I couldn't bear the thought of lying in the same bed with the man who had betrayed me. Lying on the cold daybed, I couldn't sleep. Images of them together haunted me. I imagined them sneaking around in cheap motels, whispering words of love behind my back. Waves of anger and pain washed over me, but I gritted my teeth and endured it. I had to be patient. In this game, the first one to lose their composure loses everything. The next morning, just as I predicted, their performance escalated. When I walked out of the office, I saw a suitcase sitting in the middle of the living room. Jenna was beside it, her eyes swollen, sobbing quietly. Mark sat across from her, looking grim and rubbing his temples like a man under immense stress. Seeing me, Jenna shot to her feet, bowed her head, and said between sobs, "Anna, I thought about it all night. I don't think I can stay here anymore. I only bring trouble to you and Mark. I'll leave today. Thank you for everything you've done for me." There it was. the act I had been waiting for. They were testing my reaction. They expected me to panic, to plead with her to stay, to apologize. Then Mark would have the perfect excuse to lay down conditions, demanding I treat his poor cousin better. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I looked from Jenna to Mark, my face a blank mask. I walked over to the suitcase and said coldly, "Have you really thought this through?" Jenna stammered, stunned. "Yes. Fine. If that's your decision, I won't stop you." "Perhaps this isn't the right place for you," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any pleading. I then held out my hand. "The house key. Give it back to me." Both Mark and Jenna froze, staring at me as if I were an alien. Jenna's pitiful expression morphed into one of pure panic. She never expected me to be so ruthless. Mark shot up from his chair, his face red with rage. "Anna, what the hell are you doing? Have you lost your mind? She's already this upset, and you're actually kicking her out?" he screamed at me. I smirked, a cold smile I was sure he had never seen before. "She's the one who wants to leave. I'm not kicking her out. I'm just respecting her decision. Or, do you not want her to go?" My question hit him like a punch to the gut. He was speechless. Jenna was now in a full-blown panic, her plan having backfired completely. She looked at Mark, pleading for help. "Fine then. Go! This house isn't so great anyway," Mark roared, his anger now directed entirely at me. He turned to comfort Jenna. "Don't cry. I'll find you a much better place to live. You don't have to stay here and endure this kind of treatment. Come on, I'll take you." He grabbed the suitcase, took Jenna's arm, and stormed out the door without a single backward glance. The doors slammed shut once again. But this time, I felt no pain or self-pity. I only felt a cold, chilling satisfaction. I had won the first round. I had pushed them out of my house, forcing them onto the defensive, and I knew this was just the beginning. Their drama was far from over, and I was ready to enjoy the show. After Mark and Jenna stormed out, I stood alone in the living room. The silence no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it felt liberating. I had removed the thorn from my side, at least temporarily. I knew they wouldn't give up so easily, but at least I had reclaimed my space, my control. A cold smile played on my lips. I had successfully provoked them, made them lose their composure and act rashly. I leisurely went to make myself a cup of chamomile tea. The gentle aroma helped to clear my mind. I sat down on the sofa where Mark had just been sitting, took a sip of the hot tea, and began to plot my next moves. They were gone, and they would surely find a hotel or a friend's place to stay. And Mark would not let this go. He would try to pressure me, to make me regret it, but I was no longer the naive lamb from yesterday. I was ready for whatever they threw at me. About half an hour later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I had a bad feeling, but I calmly answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice on the other end sounded rushed. "Is this Anna, wife of Mr. Mark Miller?" My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes, this is she. What is this about?" "Hi. I'm calling from the emergency room at St. Luke's Hospital. Your husband, Mark Miller, and a young woman named Jenna were just in a car accident. They've been admitted. We need you to come to the hospital immediately." A car accident. The nurse's words were like a lightning strike, but strangely, my first reaction wasn't shock or worry. A ruthless coldness took over my mind. An accident? Or another act in their play. They probably thought this would make me soften, that I'd come rushing over in a panic, and then they could resume their victim narrative. They probably wanted me to feel guilty, thinking I had indirectly caused this by kicking them out. "What is their condition?" I asked, my voice so even it surprised me. "Mr. Miller has a fractured leg and a head injury, but is conscious. The young woman's injuries are minor, mostly cuts and bruises, but she seems to be in shock. You should come right away to handle the admission paperwork and monitor their situation." "All right, I understand. I'll be there soon," I said and hung up. Come right away? No. I was in no rush. If this was a performance, I couldn't let them see me flustered. I had to arrive in the most composed, powerful manner possible. I had to look like a winner. I calmly finished my now cool tea. Then I went upstairs to my bedroom. I opened my closet and carefully selected my outfit. Not something somber, but not something flashy either. I chose a chic, tailored navy blue sheath, dress elegant, modest, but exuding quiet power. Then I sat at my vanity. My face in the mirror looked tired, but my eyes were sharp. I meticulously applied my makeup. A light foundation to cover the dark circles from a sleepless night, a touch of blush to add some color, and most importantly, the lipstick. I chose a bold, deep red, a color of confidence and authority. I wanted them to see not a withered, heartbroken wife, but a strong, indomitable woman. When I was ready, I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back was a stranger, her eyes cold, the corners of her lips curled into a mysterious smile. This was the new me. The old me had died with their betrayal. I grabbed my purse, my car keys, and walked out of the house. I drove to the hospital at a steady, unhurried pace, obeying every traffic law. The car radio played a soft, classical piece. My heart was strangely calm. I was no longer a victim, rushing to see her tormentors. I was a queen on her way to survey a battlefield where I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would be the one to decide the outcome. Hospitals always have that distinct smell, antiseptic, sickness, and anxiety. But today, as I walked through the doors of the emergency department, I didn't feel the usual suffocation. On the contrary, I felt a strange thrill. I was stepping onto their stage, and I was ready to see what they had prepared. Just as I predicted, a chaotic scene awaited me. A small crowd was gathered outside the room where Mark and Jenna were, making a scene. I immediately recognized Jenna's parents, whom I had only met once. Jenna's mother, a gaunt, haggard woman, was sitting on the floor, beating her chest and wailing dramatically. Jenna's father, a man with a dark, menacing face, was pacing back and forth, cursing under his breath. "Oh, my poor child. Why is my daughter's life so hard? She comes to the city to make a living, and this disaster happens," Jenna's mother shrieked. The moment they saw me, elegantly dressed and calmly approaching, all attention shifted. Jenna's mother shot to her feet and pointed a finger directly at my face, her eyes bloodshot. "There she is! The shameless witch! How dare you show your face here? It's you! You're the one who did this to my daughter," she screamed, lunging at me like a wild animal before being restrained by nurses. Jenna's father stepped in front of me, his voice a low growl. "What are you doing here? Haven't you done enough damage? If you hadn't treated her so cruelly, kicking her out of the house, she and Mark wouldn't have been rushing out in the middle of the day and gotten into an accident. You're a venomous snake, a heartless woman." The vicious accusations rained down on me. Onlookers started whispering, casting curious and judgmental glances my way. In their eyes, I was the evil, wealthy wife tormenting her poor, innocent cousine-in-law. I said nothing. I just stood there, silently watching them perform. My silence seemed to infuriate them even more. They wanted me to cry, to be scared, to apologize. I gave them nothing. I just looked them straight in the eye, my gaze cold and fearless. After a while, their shouting subsided, likely from exhaustion. Only then did I speak. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and firm enough to cut through the surrounding murmurs. "Are you finished screaming? This is a hospital, not a fish market. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I will call security." My tone and words stunned them into silence. They never expected me to talk back like that. Jenna's father raised a hand as if to strike me, but he flinched and pulled back when he met my icy glare. Ignoring them, I walked past them and into the hospital room. The scene inside was also just as I'd anticipated. Mark was lying on the bed, his head wrapped in bandages, one leg in a cast and elevated. He had his eyes closed, his face contorted in a mask of pain. Jenna lay in the adjacent bed, with a few bandages on her forehead and arm, her eyes puffy from crying. They looked like a pair of tragic, star-crossed lovers. When I entered, Mark slowly opened his eyes, looking at me with a mixture of blame and something akin to pleading. "Anna, you're here." Jenna started sobbing again. "Anna, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault." I pulled a chair and sat down between their two beds, placing my handbag on my lap. I looked from Mark to Jenna, a faint, humorless smile on my lips. Excellent performance. You must both be exhausted. My words made them jump. Mark frowned. Anna, what are you talking about? We were in a real accident. Oh, a real accident. I nodded, feigning understanding. And here I thought you two were filming a tragic romance. You look so perfect together, one in physical agony, the other in spiritual torment. It's truly touching. My sarcastic tone infuriated Mark. Anna, I'm not joking. Do you have any idea how close I was to dying? Is that so? What a shame you didn't, I said, my voice like ice. Then I could have collected the life insurance and been free to find my own happiness. Because frankly, watching my husband and his cousin act out this drama is exhausting. Every word I spoke was a dagger. Mark's face went from pale to beet red. Jenna just cried louder, but in her sobs, I could hear a new note of panic. They were realizing that the fool they took me for was gone. The confrontation was interrupted by the return of Jenna's parents. This time, they weren't screaming. They were followed by a middle-aged man in glasses who looked like some relative they had brought in for legal muscle. Jenna's father cleared his throat, his expression now serious, as if beginning a formal negotiation. Anna, we're not here to argue. What's done is done. Now we need to resolve this reasonably. I raised an eyebrow and crossed my arms, waiting. I was curious to see their next act. The man in glasses spoke up, his tone condescending. Ma'am, I'm Jenna's uncle. After reviewing the situation, it's clear that the root cause of this unfortunate accident stems from you. Your mistreatment of Jenna forced her to leave in distress, and Mark, in his panic to console her, was not in a stable mental state to drive, which led to the crash. Morally and legally, you bear the primary responsibility. I almost laughed out loud. The audacity to twist the truth so shamelessly was almost impressive. I remained silent, waiting for the punchline. Seeing my lack of protest, Jenna's father pressed his advantage, launching into a long-winded speech about their damages. My daughter is young and fragile. After a trauma like this, who knows what will happen to her future? Then there are the medical bills, the therapy costs, the lost wages. Mark has a broken leg. His business will suffer. Who is going to compensate for all this loss? He paused, looking directly at me, and delivered the number they had clearly rehearsed. We've discussed it. To compensate for the physical and emotional damages to my daughter, as well as to cover Mark's medical expenses and lost income, we demand you pay a sum of $1 million. $1 million. The number rolled off his tongue so smoothly, the room fell silent. I looked at their greedy, unveiled faces, the triumphant look on the uncle's face, and finally, at Mark. This was the moment I was waiting for, the moment their true motives were laid bare. It wasn't about love or hurt, it was all about money. I didn't answer them immediately. I turned to Mark, who was pretending to have his eyes closed, but I knew he was listening intently. My voice was soft, but heavy. Mark, you're my husband. I want to hear your opinion. Do you think their demand is reasonable? This was my final test for him. If he had even a shred of decency left, he would have to object to this absurd, shameless extortion. Mark slowly opened his eyes. He couldn't look at me. His gaze darted around before settling on the expectant faces of Jenna's family. After a moment of hesitation, he let out a heavy, theatrical sigh. Anna, I know this is a shock, but it happened. And it's mostly my fault for not taking better care of you and Jenna. Now that Jenna is in this state, her parents are just worried sick. $1 million is a lot, I know, but what is that compared to a person's health and future? Let's try to find a way to pay it, to make amends for our mistakes. Every word he uttered was a final hammer blow, shattering any last illusion I had about the man I married. He wasn't just complicit, he was the mastermind. He was willing to sell out his own wife to get a payday with his mistress. Jenna's mother, seeing Mark was on their side, added fuel to the fire. That's right. Mark is right. $1 million is the least you can do. Just sell that big house and your fancy car. You'll have more than enough. Sell it and pay for what you did to my daughter. Sell the house and car, I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, sell it all, Jenna's father barked. I looked at Mark, a bitter, mocking smile spreading across my face. "Mark, is that what you want too? You want us to sell our home and our car to give them the money?" He avoided my eyes, mumbling, "For now, it's the only way. Anna, we can always make the money back later. The important thing is to resolve this peacefully." "Okay," I said, suddenly standing up. The single word, spoken with such finality, surprised everyone. "Okay," I repeated, looking straight at their entire greedy clan and my despicable husband. "If this is what everyone wants. $1 million. Sell the house, sell the car. I agree." My easy agreement left them stunned, which quickly morphed into unconcealed joy. They exchanged triumphant glances, greedy smiles spreading across their faces. They thought they had won. They thought I was terrified, that I had crumbled under their pressure. They had no idea that when I said, "Okay," I was officially declaring war. A war I intended to win, and the losers would certainly not be me. I didn't stay in the hospital a moment longer. After throwing out the two words that sent Jenna's family and Mark into a state of victorious bliss, I turned and walked away. I could feel their gloating stares on my back, could almost hear their triumphant whispers about my stupidity. Let them bask in their delusion. I didn't care. All that mattered now was to act, swiftly and decisively. Leaving the hospital, I didn't drive home. That house was now nothing but a theater for their disgusting play. I just drove, aimlessly, letting my head clear. My rage was at its peak, but it didn't cloud my judgment. Instead, it sharpened it. 10 years of love, of trust, all thrown away for money and an affair. He hadn't just cheated. He was actively conspiring with outsiders to extort his own wife. This was a crime I could never forgive. Divorce was certain, but not on their terms. They wouldn't get a single penny from me. They would pay dearly for what they did. A name flashed in my mind, David. He was an old college friend, once a brilliant NYPD detective. He had left the force a few years ago to open a private investigation agency. I remembered hearing about his reputation: professional, discreet, and incredibly effective. He was exactly who I needed. I pulled into a Starbucks, found a quiet corner, and took out my phone. Finding David's number, I took a deep breath to steady my voice and dialed. "Hello? David? It's Anna. Anna from college." There was a moment of surprise on the other end, then a warm, friendly voice. "Anna. Wow. Long time no see. How have you been? What's up? I have something really important I need your help with. It's not something I can talk about over the phone. Are you free? Can I meet you right now?" I asked, my voice urgent. The seriousness in my tone must have registered. He didn't ask questions. "Yeah, of course. Where are you? Text me the address. I'll be right there." I sent him the location. 20 minutes later, a tall, well-built man walked in. Even in a casual jacket, he still carried the unmistakable air of a cop. "Anna, you don't look so good," David said, his sharp eyes taking in my appearance as he sat down. I didn't waste time. I told him everything. From the day I brought Jenna into my home, to the broken bowl, the 2 condoms, the staged accident, and the $1 million extortion plot at the hospital. I recounted it all factually, without tears. The more I spoke, the more my anger solidified into a cold, hard resolve. David listened silently, his expression growing more serious with every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Anna, I get it. You've handled this with incredible composure. Pretending to agree with them was a brilliant move. Now, we need to gather hard evidence to turn the tables." "I thought so too," I replied. "But I don't know where to start. All I have is suspicion." David gave a small, confident smile. "Don't you worry about that. Leave it to me. First, I'm going to have my guys pull all the traffic and security camera footage from the area of the accident. I have a strong feeling it wasn't an accident at all. Second, I need you to give me everything you have on Mark and this girl. Phone numbers, schedules, habits, anything you know. We're going to dig into everything." Hearing his words, a sense of security washed over me. For the first time in this nightmare, I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. "Thank you, David. I'll cover all the costs. Don't worry about it. You go home, try to act as normal as possible. Don't let them suspect a thing. Leave the rest to me. I promise I'll get you answers, fast. I left the coffee shop feeling much lighter. Driving home, my mind was no longer in turmoil. A plan for revenge was taking shape. They wanted to play games with me? Fine. Let's see who the real predator was. The days that followed were the longest of my life. I had to live in my own home, facing my enemies every day, wearing a mask of submission and guilt. Mark came home from the hospital after a few days, his cast becoming a tool for my psychological torture. He constantly complained of pain, demanding I wait on him hand and foot. Jenna's family refused to leave, claiming they needed to care for their daughter and supervise me. My house had become my prison. They openly discussed selling the house, browsing real estate websites right in front of me. Jenna's mother even hinted that after they got the money, they would buy a new house for Mark and Jenna to start their new life together. Their shamelessness was nauseating, but I just bowed my head and complied, playing the part of the guilty wife trying to atone. My docility made them even more arrogant. They were convinced I was broken. Meanwhile, David and I kept in secret contact. Every night, after they were all asleep, I would lock myself in the office and communicate with him via encrypted messages. He worked quickly. He informed me that getting the traffic cam footage was easy. And then, the day I was waiting for arrived, David called me at work. "Anna, we've got something. You're going to want to see this. Send it." "Now," I said, my heart pounding. A video file appeared on my phone. I rushed into an empty conference room, locked the door, and put in my earbuds. I pressed play, my hand trembling slightly. The screen showed footage from a high-angle security camera overlooking the street of the accident. I could see Mark's car parked on the side of the road. He and Jenna got out. They weren't rushing. They were arguing. Jenna was crying, clinging to his arm. He was pulling away, frustrated. After a few minutes of this, he suddenly pulled her into a tight embrace. They kissed, right there on the street, then got back in the car. And then the most horrifying part happened. Mark sat in the driver's seat for a moment. Then he revved the engine, turned the wheel sharply, and deliberately slammed the car into the metal guardrail on the side of the road. The impact wasn't severe, just enough to dent the front of the car and deploy the airbags. After the crash, he calmly leaned back, while Jenna started screaming. I watched the video a dozen times. Every detail was crystal clear. There was no accident. It was a meticulously staged performance. They had intentionally crashed the car and injured themselves to create the perfect pretext to trap and extort me. A shiver ran down my spine. Their cruelty was beyond my imagination. They weren't just cheaters. They were monsters. They were willing to risk their own lives for their scheme. I turned off the video, my body cold, but my heart was on fire. I had the first piece of hard evidence. This was the opening shot of my counterattack. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to send them to prison. I texted David. "Thank you. Now for the next step." Armed with the video, I felt a new strength. It wasn't just evidence, it was confirmation. My path was the right one. I continued to play the role of the remorseful wife, but inside, I was a different person. Their greed had made them careless. They openly discussed how they would spend the $1 million, planning Mark and Jenna's future together. They treated me like I was invisible, or worse, a walking ATM. Meanwhile, David and his team kept digging. At his suggestion, I managed to copy Mark's entire call history and credit card statements from the past year. It wasn't hard. He never password protected anything, still believing I was technologically inept. He had no idea his clueless wife was calmly downloading all the data of his betrayal onto a tiny USB drive. When David received the data, he just said, "The fish is on the hook. Wait for my signal." And I waited. Every day, David sent me updates. The information he uncovered pieced together the double life of the man I once loved. The results were staggering. He discovered that Mark and Jenna's affair hadn't started when she moved in. It had been going on for over a year. They had been meeting up secretly during his business trips upstate, long before they orchestrated the poor cousin's sob story. The most damning proof was a spreadsheet David sent me. It was a long, detailed list of hundreds of hotel bookings, Mark and Jenna had made together over the past year. Hundreds. The number was a slap in the face to my 10-year marriage. The list included everything from cheap motels on the outskirts of the city to five-star luxury hotels downtown. Dates, check-in times, check-out times, all meticulously documented. The most bitter irony? Every single one was paid for with the supplementary credit card I had gotten for him, the balance of which I paid off every month. I had been funding my own husband's affair. I had worked myself to the bone so they could enjoy their illicit trysts on my dime. This truth was more painful than 1,000 knives. David also sent photos, long lens shots of Mark and Jenna holding hands entering hotels, kissing in quiet cafes. Jenna decked out in expensive clothes and designer handbags I knew I hadn't bought her. All of it paid for with my money. I sat in my office, staring at the screen, at the mountain of evidence, the crash video, the call logs, the credit card statements, the hotel list. It was more than enough. The pain was gone, replaced by an icy contempt. I had all the ammunition I needed. Now it was time to plan the final battle. A battle I wouldn't just win, I would dominate. Holding the irrefutable evidence, I felt like a general about to enter a battle with a perfect strategy. Fear and pain were gone, replaced by a terrifying calm. I wouldn't just throw the evidence in their faces. That was too easy, too merciful. I wanted them to experience public humiliation. I wanted them to fall from the absolute peak of their victory. I came home, still wearing my mask of submission. They were still drunk on their impending fortune, calling real estate agents, openly discussing the division of the $10 million they had extorted. They had exaggerated the amount in their own minds. Mark, with his cast propped up on the sofa, ordered me around like a king. Jenna had dropped her pitiful act and now moved around the house like its new mistress, occasionally glancing at me with a mix of pity and scorn. That evening at dinner, after enduring their talk about how much my house would sell for, I slowly put down my fork. I cleared my throat, grabbing their attention. "Mark, Aunt, Uncle." "I've been thinking," I began, my voice filled with remorse. "I know what I did was wrong. I completely agree to the $1 million compensation, to selling the house and car." Their faces relaxed into satisfied smiles. "It's good that you've come to your senses," Jenna's mother nodded. I continued, my voice growing more pathetic. "It's just, this is a family matter. If we just quietly sell the house, what will the neighbors, our relatives say? The gossip will be terrible for our family's reputation." Jenna's father frowned. "So, what are you suggesting?" This was my moment, I think. To show my sincerity and to make everything public and clear, to avoid rumors, we should host a formal dinner. A family gathering. We can invite all our close relatives from both sides, our friends, even our colleagues. Seeing their confused looks, I elaborated. "At the dinner, in front of everyone, I will formally apologize to Jenna and to you. I will publicly announce the $1 million compensation. That way, everyone will understand the full story. They will see my remorse and your family's graciousness. Everything will be resolved honorably." The idea left them stunned for a second. Then their faces lit up with manic excitement. A public party where I, the successful, wealthy wife, would have to bow down and apologize to the poor, downtrodden mistress. A stage where they would be celebrated as magnanimous victims, and I would be the villain. It was a public humiliation for me, and an unparalleled ego boost for them. Their greed and arrogance made them blind to any suspicion. "Yes, that's a great idea." Jenna's father slammed the table in approval. "We must do it. Let everyone see the injustice my daughter has suffered." "Yes, make it a huge event," her mother chimed in. "So Anna will be so shamed she'll never be able to show her face in public again." Even Mark nodded eagerly, his eyes shining. "That's a good idea, Anna. It shows you're taking responsibility." I bowed my head to hide the cold smile on my lips. "Of course. You just pick a date. I'll handle all the expenses, the venue, the invitations, everything." They quickly decided on the following weekend, at one of the most luxurious five-star hotel ballrooms in the city. They wanted my humiliation to be as high class as possible. I obediently agreed. For the next few days, I was busy booking the venue, compiling the guest list, sending out invitations. I did everything perfectly. They watched me, more convinced than ever of my surrender. They had no idea that every invitation I sent was a ticket to the final, disastrous act of their own play. The stage was set. The script was written, and I, as both director and lead actor, was calmly waiting for the curtain to rise. The week before the apology dinner was surreal. On the surface, our house was filled with a fake, festive atmosphere. Jenna's family went on a massive shopping spree for the big day, swiping my credit card on designer clothes and jewelry without a second thought. They saw it as a small advance on their $1 million prize. Jenna's mother called everyone back home, boasting about how her daughter was about to be vindicated and receive a massive settlement. Mark and Jenna no longer bothered to hide their affection. They were openly intimate in front of me. Even with his cast, Mark would hobble around, doting on her, feeding her, whispering sweet nothings. They were performing a grand romance, and in their play, I was the pathetic, irrelevant extra. They wanted me to see it, to suffer, but I just watched them with the detached amusement of an audience member at a bad comedy. While they were reveling in their victory, I was preparing for my own performance. I secretly recorded their conversations, Jenna's mother bragging, her father planning how to spend the money, Mark and Jenna whispering their filthy plans. A tiny, hidden microphone in the living room did its job perfectly. I also met with David again. He had prepared all the evidence files for a professional presentation. He also contacted a few of his old colleagues at the NYPD, alerting them to a major, organized fraud and extortion case, and arranged for them to be present at the hotel at the designated time. The day of the dinner arrived. I woke up early. I chose a stunning, floor-length evening gown in a deep burgundy, a color of power. I wore my makeup bolder than usual, with a sharp, smoky eye and deep red lips. When I came downstairs, everyone stared. They were surprised by my glamorous appearance, but quickly dismissed it as a desperate last attempt to save face. We arrived at the hotel. The ballroom was magnificently decorated, and guests were already mingling. My relatives were there, Mark's relatives were there, close friends, and important business contacts. The atmosphere was awkward. People looked from me to Mark on his crutches, and Jenna's gaudily dressed family. The rumors had spread, and most believed their story. I was the cruel, jealous wife. They looked at me with pity and disapproval. I ignored them, smiling politely. I found David at a table in the back. He was dressed in a sharp suit, blending in perfectly. "Everything's ready," I whispered. He gave a confident nod. "Ready when you are. Just stay calm, Anna. Tonight is going to be unforgettable." I smiled. "I'm counting on it." The lights in the ballroom dimmed, and a spotlight hit the stage. The MC I had hired walked out. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight," he began, following the script Jenna's family had approved. "As some of you know, the Miller family has recently gone through a difficult time, a misunderstanding that has caused deep pain, especially for Miss Jenna, Mark's cousin, and for Mark himself." The spotlight moved to Mark and Jenna as they were helped onto the stage. He looked pained on his crutches. She looked tearful and fragile. The audience murmured in sympathy. "But tonight," the MC continued, "we are here to witness a beautiful act of reconciliation, a sincere apology. And now, please welcome the main reason we are here tonight, Mrs. Anna Miller." All eyes turned to me. I stood up, smoothed my gown, and walked toward the stage, my steps steady and confident. Mark and Jenna's family looked at me with triumphant smirks. They were waiting for me to bow, to cry, to beg for forgiveness. I took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," my voice rang out, clear and strong. As the MC said, "Today is a day to reveal the truth and clear up all misunderstandings. But before I give my apology, I'd like to share a short film I've prepared so everyone can better understand the unfortunate events that took place." I signaled to David at the tech booth. Mark and his co-conspirators looked confused, but they assumed it was some sentimental family slideshow. They were wrong. The ballroom lights went out, and the massive screen behind me lit up. The show was about to begin. The room fell silent as the first images appeared. It was the traffic cam footage. The car parked, the argument, the kiss, and then, the deliberate crash into the guardrail. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the crowd. "What is that?" "They crashed on purpose." Jenna's family froze, their faces draining of all color. Mark stared at the screen, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sheer horror. I held the microphone, my voice cutting through the noise like a razor. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the accident that supposedly broke my husband's leg and traumatized his cousin. The accident for which I was demanded to pay $1 million in compensation." The video ended, but the screen immediately switched to the next exhibit. The photos of Mark and Jenna, hand in hand, entering hotels. The credit card receipts. And finally, the spreadsheet listing hundreds of hotel stays over the past year. "And this," my voice boomed, "is the real reason for my husband's deep concern for his cousin, an illicit affair funded by my hard work." The ballroom exploded. People were on their feet, shouting. Mark's relatives were looking at him with utter disgust. "But wait, there's more," I said, signaling David again. An audio recording began to play over the speakers. It was their voices, crystal clear. Jenna's father demanding the $1 million. Her mother gleefully planning to make me so shamed she can't show her face. And Mark's weak, pathetic voice agreeing to sell our home. The entire fraud, the entire extortion plot, was laid bare for all to hear. The truth was so ugly, so shocking, that the room was stunned into silence. I looked down at Jenna's family. They were trembling, utterly broken. Her parents had slumped in their chairs, unable to look up. Finally, I locked eyes with Mark and Jenna, who were trapped on stage. And that, everyone, is the full story. A perfect play of betrayal, fraud, and extortion. Now, Mark, Jenna, would you like to give your apology? The room descended into chaos. Curses and insults were hurled at them. A relative of Mark stood up and screamed, "Mark, you have disgraced this entire family." Mark, completely unhinged by the public humiliation, turned on Jenna. "This is all your fault. You bitch. If it wasn't for you, this never would have happened." He swung his crutch at her, but in his rage, he lost his balance. He stumbled and fell hard, his casted leg hitting the stage with a sickening crack. He screamed in agony and shame. Jenna, seeing this and overwhelmed by the shock, fainted, collapsing to the floor. The stage was a disaster. One screaming in pain, one unconscious. In the audience, Jenna's parents were being surrounded and berated by furious guests. Amid the chaos, I stood firm. I waited for the noise to die down a bit, then delivered the final blow. "There's one more truth you all should know," I said, my voice commanding attention. "My successful CEO husband has actually been unemployed for 2 years. His company went bankrupt. He has been living entirely off my income. The house, the car, every meal he ate, I paid for it all. All the assets are in my name. So, after our divorce, he will leave with nothing. He will be penniless, just as he was when I met him." This final revelation was the knockout punch. It explained everything. The extortion wasn't just greed. It was the desperate act of a parasite about to lose its host. Mark, hearing this from the floor, went berserk. "You're lying. You evil witch! I'll kill you!" he shrieked, trying to crawl towards me before being restrained by hotel security. At that exact moment, the main doors of the ballroom burst open. David walked in, flanked by several uniformed NYPD officers. Their presence silenced the entire room. David took the microphone from me. "We have sufficient evidence of organized fraud, extortion, and conspiracy against these individuals," he announced, holding up the USB drive. "Mr. Mark Miller, Miss Jenna, and her parents are to come with us for questioning." The collapse was total and swift. The police handcuffed Jenna's parents. Mark and Jenna, after receiving medical attention, were escorted out in disgrace, under the contemptuous glares of everyone they knew. The play was over, and the actors had received their just deserts. The party ended with the intervention of the law. As the police cars sped away, sirens wailing, I finally felt my legs give out. David caught me. "It's over, Anna. It's all over." I nodded, and then the tears came. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. All the pain, the anger, The humiliation I had bottled up for months poured out of me. I had won. I had gotten my justice. In the following weeks, the case became a local sensation. The evidence was irrefutable. At the trial, I wasn't a victim. I was a witness. I sat in the front row and calmly watched the people who had destroyed my life stand before the judge. Mark looked like a broken man, 10 years older. He couldn't even look at me. Jenna sobbed and blamed everyone but herself. Her parents remained defiant, but the evidence was absolute. For conspiracy to commit fraud and extortion, Mark, as the mastermind, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Jenna received 3 years of probation. Her parents each received 2 years of probation for their roles. Justice was served. 8 years, that was the price for his betrayal. A few weeks later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Jenna's mother, crying and begging. "Anna, please, I'm begging you. I know we were wrong, but please, have mercy. Write a letter to the judge to reduce Mark's sentence. He was your husband for 10 years. And what do you want me to do about that?" I asked coldly. "Anything. What do you want? We'll do anything," she pleaded. A cold smile spread across my face. They wanted to play with money? Fine. You wanted $1 million from me, I said. Now, I want $1.5 million from you. You get me $1.5 million in cash, and I'll write the letter. The line went dead silent. I could picture her stunned, horrified face. I knew they could never get that kind of money. It wasn't about the money. It was about making them feel the same powerlessness and humiliation they had tried to inflict on me. Are you joking?" she finally stammered. "I don't have time for jokes," I said, my voice like ice. "Get the money or never call me again." I hung up and blocked her number. It was the last I ever heard from them. With everything settled, I began to clean up my life. The divorce was finalized in record time. The court awarded me 100% of my assets. Mark got nothing. The day I held the final divorce decree, I felt only a profound sense of peace. I was finally free. I sold the house. It was tainted with too many bad memories. I sold the car. With the money, I had a substantial fortune to start over anywhere I wanted. I quit my job. I packed only what mattered: my books, old photos, gifts from my parents. Everything related to Mark, I threw in the trash. I chose San Diego for my new beginning. I loved the ocean, the calm pace of life. It was the complete opposite of the suffocating pressure of New York. I bought a small, beautiful condo overlooking the Pacific. Every morning, I wake up to the sunrise over the water. Every evening, I sit on my balcony and listen to the waves. I took time for myself. I learned to surf. I joined a painting class. I traveled alone. I lived for myself, on my own terms. Sometimes I think about Mark, not with hatred, but as a painful, expensive lesson. He taught me that you can never place your happiness in someone else's hands. True happiness comes from within. And I have found it, here, in this beautiful city by the sea. A simple, free, and complete happiness. I don't know what the future holds, but it no longer matters. What matters is that I found myself again a free, independent, and happy woman. And that is the most perfect ending to my story. Life is full of surprises, sometimes from the people closest to us. Thank you for listening. If you found this story meaningful, please subscribe for more real-life stories. May you always have peace and clarity in all your life's choices.